Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The walls of Newman Enterprises seemed to close in on Victoria as she paced frantically, her mind racing with questions that had no answers, her heart pounding like a war drum, because nothing in Genoa City could have prepared her for the bombshell that had just shattered her world. Claire's deception had been fully exposed, and the truth was more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Audra, the sweet, seemingly innocent girl she had grown to care for, the girl she had even once called a friend, was in fact Claire's real daughter, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the very fabric of her life, shaking the foundations of trust, loyalty, and love she had built painstakingly over the years, because Victoria had believed for so long that she knew Claire, that she understood her motives, that she could anticipate her next move. But Claire had been weaving a web of lies so intricate, so devious that no one, not even Victoria, had suspected the depth of her cunning, and as the pieces fell into place, the secret meetings, the whispered phone calls, the strange disappearances, and the inexplicable manipulations of everyone around her, it became painfully clear that Claire had been orchestrating a plan from the shadows, a plan that had kept her real daughter hidden, masked, and manipulated for reasons only she fully understood. And the revelation that Audra was the daughter of Claire, a truth that Victoria had only just uncovered through an anonymous tip, confidential documents and the painstaking verification of DNA results, tore through Victoria like a tidal wave, leaving her breathless, tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking as she clutched the evidence to her chest, unable to fathom how someone she had trusted could betray her so utterly. And yet the proof was undeniable, irrefutable. And as she confronted Claire, who maintained a facade of calm and composure, her eyes glinting with a mixture of triumph and defiance, Victoria realized that the woman she had once considered an ally, a friend, and at times even a surrogate family member, had been playing a role so convincingly that no one could have foreseen the devastation she would unleash, because Claire's deception wasn't just about hiding a child. It was about control, manipulation, and power, about bending people to her will, about turning their emotions against them, and Audra, sweet Audra, had been the unknowing pawn in a game that had stretched for years, a game where every smile, every act of kindness, every shared moment had been carefully calculated. And as Victoria absorbed the enormity of the truth, memories of past interactions flooded her mind. Audra's sudden bouts of sadness, her inexplicable outbursts, the moments when Claire seemed overprotective or unusually attentive, and all of it now made sense, each puzzle piece falling into place with cruel precision, revealing the picture of deceit Claire had painted over years of meticulous planning. And Victoria's anguish intensified as she realized the emotional betrayal extended beyond just herself, because the entire Newman family, the Abbotts, and even those tangentially involved in Claire's life had been manipulated, misled, and blindsided. And the thought that Audra had been living a life built on a foundation of lies, her identity stolen from her, her very sense of self constructed on a false narrative, was almost too much to bear. And in that moment, Victoria's tears flowed freely, uncontrollable. As she imagined the conversation that must now occur between mother and daughter, the confrontation that Audra would inevitably face when she learned the truth about her origins, about the mother who had hidden her, the mother who had chosen deception over honesty, and Victoria's heart ached for the girl she had grown to love in her own way, for the innocence that had been stripped from her life by Claire's machinations. And as she grappled with the complex swirl of emotions, anger, grief, betrayal, compassion, and disbelief, Victoria knew that the fallout would be seismic, that the repercussions of this revelation would ripple through Genoa City, affecting friendships, alliances, business partnerships, and the very dynamics of the families intertwined with Claire's life. And she also knew that she herself would have to confront not only Claire but the consequences of trusting a woman who had mastered the art of deception so completely, because in exposing Audra's true parentage, Claire had forced everyone to reevaluate their understanding of who they could trust, who they could believe, and who they were truly fighting against. And as Victoria's mind raced, she pictured the immediate scenes that would unfold, the confrontation in the Newman living room, the stunned expressions of the assembled family, the gasps, the accusations, the shouted denials, the tears of Audra as she processed the reality of her mother's betrayal, and the simmering anger that would inevitably surface as she realized the extent to which her life had been manipulated, controlled, and shaped by Claire's decisions. And Victoria, caught between empathy for the girl and fury at the mother, understood that she had a role to play, that she could no longer remain a passive observer, that she must act to protect Audra, to support her, and to hold Claire accountable for the emotional carnage she had unleashed. And yet even as she resolved this, Victoria felt the weight of complexity because Claire's motives, though reprehensible, were rooted in a convoluted mixture of love, fear, and perhaps misguided protection, a tangled moral landscape where right and wrong were blurred by intention and consequence, and Victoria realized that the next steps would require delicate maneuvering, careful planning, and emotional resilience, because in a world where secrets could destroy lives, where truth could be weaponized, and where deception could masquerade as care, she would have to navigate a labyrinth of loyalties, alliances, and personal ethics to ensure that justice, honesty, and familial bonds could survive the aftermath of this shocking revelation. And as she prepared to confront Claire, to speak the words that had been burning in her chest, to ask the questions that demanded answers, she felt a surge of determination, a fierce resolve that the truth, however painful, must no longer be hidden, and that Audra, whose life had been defined by shadows and lies, deserved to know the mother who had abandoned her in secrecy, and that Victoria herself, in tears and trembling with both sorrow and strength, would stand as a witness, as a guide, and as an advocate, for the girl whose life had been stolen. And as the confrontation loomed, Victoria understood that the revelation of Claire's deception would change everything, alter relationships forever, and leave scars that would take years to heal, but also, paradoxically, it offered an opportunity, a chance for honesty, reconciliation, and the forging of a new, if fragile, bond between mother and daughter. And though the road ahead was fraught with pain, anger, and heartbreak, Victoria, even in her tears, felt the stirrings of hope, hope that truth, once revealed, could empower, could heal, and could ultimately allow Audra to reclaim her identity and her life from the shadow of Claire's long-hidden lies, because the shattering of illusions, while devastating, also had the potential to illuminate the path toward authenticity, integrity, and genuine connection. And Victoria, as she wiped her tears, straightened her spine, and took a deep, steadying breath, resolved that she would not falter, that she would confront Claire with courage, that she would stand by Audra with unwavering support, and that in a world where betrayal had run deep and secrets had festered for years, she would be the one to ensure that truth, love, and justice, however complicated, could finally prevail. And as the tension mounted, the family gathered, the air thick with anticipation, the eyes of Audra wide with confusion and dawning comprehension, and Claire, poised yet trembling just slightly beneath her mask of composure. The stage was set for one of the most explosive, emotional, and heart-wrenching confrontations in Genoa city history, where revelations would crash like waves, where emotions would ignite like wildfire, and where Victoria, in tears yet resolute, would finally bear witness to the unmasking of Claire's ultimate deception, a truth that would reverberate through every life touched by her cunning, every heart manipulated by her charm, and every bond strained by her secrets, because in that moment, as the past collided with the present and the consequences of years of lies came to light, everyone would realize that nothing in the world of the young and the restless would ever be the same again, that Claire's deception had not only been exposed but had fundamentally altered the landscape of love, trust, and family. And, as Victoria looked at Audra, at Claire, and at the stunned faces of those around her, she understood that the emotional upheaval was only beginning, that the journey to healing would be long and painful, but that the revelation, shocking as it was, held within it the seeds of truth, justice, and ultimately a chance at redemption. And with that thought, Victoria, still trembling yet unbroken, prepared to face the fallout head-on, to navigate the treacherous waters of betrayal and revelation, and to guide Audra through the storm that Claire had created, because in the end truth, no matter how devastating, had the power to set people free. And Victoria, in tears but filled with unwavering resolve, would ensure that freedom, justice, and honesty would not be denied in the wake of Claire's most shocking, manipulative, and life-altering deception. And as the room held its collective breath, the stage was set for an emotional reckoning that would echo through Genoa city for years to come, because nothing could undo the truth now revealed. Audra was Claire's daughter, and the consequences of that revelation would change everything forever. Oh, much to bear, and Victoria's mind reeled as she considered the countless moments where Audra had unknowingly been a victim of her own mother's intricate manipulations, where Claire's carefully orchestrated schemes had dictated the course of her life from birth, shaping her experiences, influencing her relationships, and creating a false reality that now threatened to collapse in on itself like a house of cards in the harsh light of truth, and Victoria felt a cold fury rising within her as she thought of the countless opportunities she herself had been deceived, the times she had extended trust, offered guidance, or opened her heart, only to discover that every act of kindness had been subtly twisted to serve Claire's hidden agenda, and the thought that Claire had maintained this deception for years, spinning a narrative so believable that even the sharpest minds in Genoa City had been fooled, sent shivers down Victoria's spine, because this was not merely a revelation, it was a reckoning, a seismic shift that would forever alter the landscape of personal relationships, alliances, and rivalries in a city already rife with drama, betrayal, and hidden agendas. And Victoria's thoughts spiraled as she imagined Audra, innocent and unaware, discovering the truth herself, realizing that the woman she had trusted as a mother, as a mentor, or even as a friend, had been absent, not because of circumstance, but because of choice, and the weight of that realization was crushing. As Victoria envisioned Audra's heartbreak, her confusion, her anger, her feelings of abandonment, and her inevitable questions about identity, loyalty, and love, questions that Victoria knew she herself would struggle to answer, because how could one explain a lie so monumental, a deception so deeply embedded in someone's entire life, without shattering them completely, without leaving scars that would linger indefinitely? And as Victoria prepared herself for the confrontation, she felt the tension build, the emotional pressure mounting like a storm about to break, because confronting Claire meant not only demanding answers but also navigating the complex interplay of guilt, justification, and denial that Claire would surely employ in her defense. And Victoria knew from experience that Claire's intelligence, charm, and cunning would make her a formidable opponent in this emotional battle, capable of twisting words, evading responsibility, and manipulating perception. But Victoria's resolve hardened, because this was no longer about rivalry, ambition, or social standing. This was about truth, justice, and protecting a young woman from the lifelong consequences of deceit. And as the hours ticked by, Victoria recalled the subtle signs she had once overlooked, the protective glances, the unexplained absences, the hushed conversations, and the fleeting expressions of fear or guilt that now, in hindsight, painted a clear picture of the years of manipulation and concealment. And each recollection stoked the fire of anger and determination within her, because the betrayal was personal, visceral, and profoundly impactful, touching not only her sense of judgment but also her emotions, her trust, and her ability to believe in the sincerity of those around her. And as she walked through the halls of Newman Enterprises, documents in hand, phone buzzing with messages from concerned family members, Victoria felt the crushing enormity of responsibility on her shoulders, knowing that how she handled this revelation could either heal or further wound, protect or endanger. And as she approached the location where Claire had agreed to meet, she steeled herself for the confrontation, rehearsing questions, anticipating excuses, preparing to dissect every word, every expression, and every defensive maneuver, because she understood that in the world of Claire, truth was relative, and deception was a weapon wielded with precision. And yet, despite the fear, despite the tension, Victoria felt a surge of clarity, a certainty that exposing the truth, no matter how painful, was essential, because the revelation of Audra's true parentage was not a mere secret. It was a defining moment, a life-altering event that demanded honesty, accountability, and ultimately reconciliation. And as she entered the room, she saw Claire seated with an air of calm authority, eyes glinting with the subtle satisfaction of a woman who believed herself untouchable. And the sight ignited a mixture of rage and resolve in Victoria, because every second Claire remained silent, every breath she took in the false guise of innocence, was another insult to Audra, to Victoria, and to every person who had unknowingly been manipulated by her cunning. And Victoria's voice, when she finally spoke, trembled with suppressed emotion, cutting through the tension like a blade, demanding answers, confronting the years of lies, and holding Claire accountable for the emotional devastation she had inflicted. And Claire, ever composed yet betraying a flicker of unease, responded with a mixture of deflection, justification, and carefully crafted denial. But Victoria, having anticipated this, pressed on, questioning every decision, challenging every omission, dissecting every carefully constructed facade, because the truth demanded exposure, because Audra deserved to know her own history, because the lives of everyone involved had been irrevocably altered by one woman's long-hidden secret. And as the dialogue unfolded, the air thick with confrontation, Emotions ran high, tears flowed freely, and the emotional stakes escalated with every word, because this was more than a confrontation. It was a reckoning, a purging of deceit, a moment where past actions collided with present consequences, forcing each participant to confront not only the reality of Claire's deception but also the moral, ethical, and emotional implications that would reverberate through Genoa City for years to come. And as Victoria continued to press Claire, exposing inconsistencies, drawing out confessions, and holding her gaze unwaveringly, she felt a measure of satisfaction, because each revelation, each admission, peeled back the layers of manipulation, revealing the raw truth beneath. And as Audra, now fully aware of the revelation, struggled to process the enormity of what she had just learned, her emotions a chaotic blend of anger, confusion, sorrow, and betrayal, Victoria reached out, offering support, guidance, and compassion, determined to help her navigate the emotional turmoil and rebuild a sense of identity and trust that had been so violently disrupted. And as the confrontation reached its climax, the room resonated with the intensity of raw human emotion. The impact of long-buried secrets finally laid bare, the ripple effects of deception crashing through the hearts and minds of everyone present, and Victoria, though exhausted, tear-streaked, and emotionally drained, understood that in exposing Claire's deception, in revealing the truth about Audra's parentage, she had not only confronted a personal betrayal but had also catalyzed a moment of profound transformation, a turning point where honesty, accountability, and the opportunity for healing could begin to take root, because in a city defined by secrets, lies, and unexpected revelations, the courage to face the truth, to demand it, and to stand by those affected was a rare and powerful act, and Victoria, embodying that courage, knew that the journey ahead, though fraught with difficulty, heartbreak, and complex emotions, offered the possibility of redemption, understanding, and ultimately, a redefined sense of family and trust, because the consequences of Claire's deception, though devastating, had illuminated the path forward, a path where truth, once hidden, could finally guide decisions, foster healing, and allow those whose lives had been manipulated to reclaim agency, to rebuild relationships, and to confront a future informed not by lies but by the unvarnished reality of one woman's shocking, life-altering secret. And as the emotional dust settled, as the tears subsided, and as Audra, Victoria, and even Claire herself faced the implications of what had been revealed, the reverberations of this moment promised to echo throughout the lives of everyone touched by this revelation, leaving indelible marks of sorrow, enlightenment, and the transformative power of truth, because in the end, nothing in Genoa City would ever be the same again, and the exposure of Claire's deception, the revelation that Audra was her real daughter, would forever be remembered as one of the most shocking, emotionally charged, and defining moments in the history of the young and the restless, a moment that would shape destinies, redefine relationships, and challenge perceptions of trust, loyalty, and love in ways no one could have predicted. A victim of her mother's manipulations, where every choice, every opportunity, every relationship had been subtly influenced, guided, or constrained by Claire's hidden agenda, and Victoria felt a rising tide of sorrow and indignation as she realized that Audra's entire understanding of family, trust, and love had been built on lies, and now the fragile trust she had begun to form with Victoria, the affection, the sense of safety and belonging, was threatened by the revelation of a truth so profound it could shatter even the strongest bonds. And as Victoria contemplated the cascading consequences, she thought of the extended Newman family, who would now face their own reckonings, forced to confront the ways in which Claire's deception had silently manipulated alliances, ambitions, and loyalties. And the more Victoria reflected, the more the enormity of the betrayal became clear, because Claire's calculated secrecy had not only hidden Audra's identity but had also created ripples of doubt and suspicion throughout every connection she had touched, and Victoria's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden wave of compassion for Audra, for the innocent girl who now faced the daunting task of reconciling her love for a mother who had hidden her very existence with the pain, anger, and confusion that such a revelation inevitably caused. And in that instant, Victoria understood that her role was no longer passive observation but active support, standing as a guide, protector, and voice of reason as Audra struggled to make sense of a past riddled with deceit. And as Victoria's mind raced with plans to help Audra navigate this emotional labyrinth, she felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily upon her, because in Genoa City, where secrets had power and lies could destroy lives, the revelation of Claire's deception was not simply a scandal, It was a defining moment, one that would shape decisions, relationships, and personal identities for years to come. And Victoria, even in her exhaustion and tears, resolved to confront every lingering lie, to demand accountability, and to ensure that Audra, now fully aware of the truth, could begin the long, painful, but necessary journey toward understanding, healing, and reclaiming the narrative of her own life, a life that had been stolen, manipulated, and hidden for far too long.